Some Like It Hot is one of the most beloved comedies ever made. It's fast, it's clever, it's chaotic, and it's endlessly quotable. But beneath the jokes, beneath the disguises, beneath the champagne and the jazz and the screwball energy, the film is doing something deeper. It's telling the truth about what happens when lying becomes living. It asks us, what happens when deception becomes the story you live in? Because Some Like It Hot isn't really a story about two musicians running from the mob. It's a story about two men who believe deception is the only way to survive. It's a story where identity becomes costume, where desire becomes manipulation, and where romance becomes performance. Where freedom becomes a mask you wear, not a life you live. And if you've ever felt like you've had to pretend to belong, if you've ever shaped yourself to fit someone else's expectations, if you've ever believed that hiding was safer than being known, then friends, this episode is for you. This is Cinematic Scripture, where I help Christians who feel spiritually fragmented or off script make sense of Scripture, film, and their own lives through one unified Christ-centered story. I'm your host, Kyle Harless. Let's roll film. Set in Prohibition-era Chicago, Some Like It Hot opens in a world already built on deception. There's a funeral parlor that's actually a speakeasy, a coffin that's actually a liquor cabinet, a city where survival depends on pretending. And into this world stumble Joe and Jerry, two broke musicians who witness the St. Valentine's Day massacre and flee for their lives. Here's the 5-sentence story structure. There's the world, two broke musicians hustling for work in a world built on lies. Disruption, they witness a mob hit. Their action is to disguise themselves as women and flee with an all-female band to Florida. But there's opposition, the mob, their own lies, the romantic entanglements with sugar, and the escalating chaos of deception. And the new world that they enter at the end is they escape again, but they're still lying, still pretending, still trapped in the same cycle. It's funny, it's hilarious, it's frantic, it's brilliant, the script is fantastic in this film, but at the same time, it's tragic, because nothing actually changes in the characters' lives or in the world around them. Okay, let's talk narrative of the film. So from the first frame, the film tells you what it is. It's a world where nothing is what it seems. Again, there's a funeral parlor as a bar, a coffin as a liquor truck, and a jazz band is a hiding place. The millionaire is a con, the woman is a disguise, and romance is a performance. The proposal at the end of the film is the punchline. Joe and Jerry don't just lie to survive, they lie because they believe it's the only way to live. And the deeper the deception goes, the more absurd and revealing the story becomes. These two guys are two broke musicians who, when the cops hit the parlor, they escape, and then trying to get another job, they borrow a car, and when they go to get the car, they witness a mob hit. So what do? They run to Florida, pretending to be women, dressing up as girls in this all-girl band. But that's where they meet Marilyn Monroe's character, Sugar. And Joe pretends to be a millionaire to seduce Sugar because she always falls for the saxophone player, the wrong guy, and so Joe pretends to be a millionaire to seduce her. Jerry ends up meeting Osgood, and he ends up getting engaged to Osgood. And these guys just go further and further down deception until towards the end of the film, lo and behold, the mob shows up for a kind of like a party, a reception, a reunion, if you will. And that's where it kind of just hits the fan. They realize that Joe and Jerry are there dressed as women, and all hell breaks loose in the final few minutes as they try and catch them. Now, again, I think this film is hilarious. It is one of the classic comedies. I don't know if it could definitely be. I don't think it could be made today, but it is very funny. But what you have is this world of lies and deception, where you have Joe pretending to be a millionaire to seduce Sugar, where Jerry, as he's pretending to be a woman, ends up engaged. And Sugar pretends she's finally found a good man. Osgood pretends that Daphne, who is Jerry, is exactly who he wants. The band pretends nothing is strange, and the mob even pretend that they're respectable businessmen. Everyone in this story is lying, everyone is performing, everyone is wearing a mask, and the film's comedy, it works because the audience sees what the characters refuse to see, and you are meant to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. And so don't go in thinking this is a serious film. The comedy works because we see what the characters refuse to see. That their deception doesn't free them, it just traps them and takes them further and further down. Okay, so let's look at some of the characters in the film. So we have Joe. His desire is pleasure, it's escape, it's advantage. He takes advantage of people and uses what he can get. His fear is being broke, being powerless, and his flaw is his manipulation. It's disguised as charm. He charms people, but it's manipulation. In his arc, he begins as a hustler and he ends as a hustler with a new costume. Now, granted, I will say on Joe's behalf that he does try and warn Sugar that he's no good for her and that he's just one of those jazz players that she always falls for. And she stays with him and he embraces her. So even though he does tell her, like, hey, this is not going to go well, I'm no good for you, he still stays the hustler. There's Jerry. He desires safety. He just wants a coat, he wants bed, he wants food, but he fears everything. And Joe constantly gets him pulled into situations that Jerry has to try and get out of. But his flaw is the fear that becomes self-deception. All right, it's fear, and then it eventually becomes self-deception. In the beginning, he's got to tell himself, "I'm a girl, I'm a girl, I'm a girl," so he doesn't hit on the women in the band. And then when Osgood proposes to him, he's like talking about all this great stuff, and Joe is like, "Dude, you need to snap out of it." He's like, "I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy." So it's this self-deception that Jerry faces. Now his arc, he begins the film, he's terrified, right? He's scared, and he's like, Joe, what are we gonna do? But he ends engaged, and he's still terrified. He's trying to explain why he can't marry Osgood at the end of the film. There's Sugar. Her desire is love, but her fear is being abandoned again. Her flaw is self-deception about men. She says she keeps choosing the wrong men, and she says that at the beginning of the film she is choosing the wrong men, and at the end of the film she ends up choosing the wrong man again. And then there's Osgood. Man, he wants companionship. He's had several wives. He's old. He's lonely. His flaw is naivety. He begins oblivious and he ends oblivious. But he's happy at the end, even though he finds out that Jerry is a man. Now, together, these characters ask what happens when deception becomes the story you live in. All these characters are living in deception. And this film shows us what happens when that's the story you live. Okay, let's talk about the key scene of this film. It's the final scene, honestly, and it's so iconic. Jerry is still dressed as Daphne, and he's trying desperately to break off the engagement with Osgood. "I can't marry you," he says. "Why not?" "I'm not a natural blonde." Osgood responds, "It doesn't matter." Well, Daphne says, "I smoke." "I don't care," says Osgood. I can never have children." "Well, we can adopt." "Oh, Osgood, I can't marry you because I'm a man." "Well, nobody's perfect." And the end credits hit. And honestly, it's hilarious. It's written so well. It's brilliant. Osgood would rather be naive and just live with Daphne despite the fact that he's a man. And they're both men. But it's hilarious, it's brilliant, and it's devastating. Because what this final scene of the film does, this key moment, it ends not with truth, but with the ultimate endorsement of deception. In this moment, identity doesn't matter. Truth doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter. As long as the lie works. It's the punchline that reveals the premise of the film. In a world built on deception, the lie becomes life. Now again, this movie, I think is so funny. I love fish out of water stories. I like situational comedies. And this does it so well. And that ending is so good, the way it sets up that punchline. But it is revealing that in this world built on deception, the lie becomes life. Okay, so let's talk about some of the imagery, foreshadowing, setups in the film, because this is a visual medium, film is. So first, we have the disguises, right? These are identity as costume. Joe and Jerry don't just wear dresses. They become Josephine and Daphne. They wear identities. And when you pretend long enough, you begin to believe the lie. At least Jerry does in this film. There's the eyeglasses. Joe steals the eyeglasses from the band manager. And so it's this idea of seeing without seeing. The band manager, he can't see without his glasses, but Joe steals them to complete his millionaire disguise. And so not only is it imagery, it's also a symbolism of blindness. Because Sugar is blind to the deception of Joe. Osgood is blind to the truth of Daphne. Joe is blind to his own manipulation to people. The band is blind to what is going on with these two characters. No one in this film sees clearly, and the glasses are a symbol of that. There's the coffin, the speakeasy coffin. It's death as disguise. It is a coffin full of alcohol. It's a funeral home full of dancers. And so it's this world where death is a prop and deception is normal. There's Spat's shoes, Spat's the mobster, okay? It's order in a world of chaos. Just about every time, there's maybe one or two instances, but almost every time Spatz enters the scene, the shot starts with his shoes. All right, the camera is right on his shoes. It's clean. It's ordered. It's controlled. Yeah, he might still have the coffee stain from the bar, but it's this reminder that deception always has consequences. That even though they're running, it's not that far behind. And then we have the yacht, where Joe convinces Jerry, instead of going on Osgood's yacht, to have Osgood go dancing. While Osgood and Jerry, or Osgood and Daphne, depending on how you look at it, are out dancing the tango all night long, Joe uses his yacht to seduce and manipulate and use Sugar. And so he fakes his millionaire persona, and it's this masterclass in manipulation. And the yacht is the stage, Sugar is the audience, and Joe is the actor. It's romance as performance. He thinks he loves Sugar, but he loves the idea of her. He loves the sex appeal, but he is not even being honest with her, and he is using her. So these are some of the images and some of the scenery, the symbolism that shows just how deep the deception goes in Some Like It Hot. Okay, let's talk about the theme of the film. Some Like It Hot deals with themes of deception, of lying, of disguise, of revelation in a sense. And the controlling idea of this film is when deception becomes a way of life, it creates temporary survival, but long-term distortion. And so this film, it communicates this lie, because in this film, lies protect you, lies help you survive, lies can even lead to happiness for Sugar and for Osgood. But the truth beneath the comedy is much more sobering. No one changes, no one grows, no one becomes whole. They escape the mob, but they don't escape themselves or the deception. And even though the film ends with them escaping the mob, there's no resolution, so you're just waiting for the chase to start up again. Okay, now that we've looked at the film, let's talk about how we can engage Some Like It Hot biblically. So again, Some Like It Hot, it's a comedy, and I think it's also can be viewed as a parable about what happens when deception becomes identity. And Scripture has a name for that, and it's darkness. Not just moral darkness, but narrative darkness. It's a world where truth is optional, where identity is fluid, where relationships are transactional, where survival requires pretending, where deception feels safer than honesty. And Scripture, I think, as we read Scripture, we can see that it's been telling the story since the beginning. Because the Bible doesn't just warn against lying, it reveals what happens when deception becomes the story you live in. So let me show you this by walking you through 3 biblical portraits of deception. So the first one we see is Genesis chapter 3. This is deception as liberation. All right. Then we're going to have Jacob, which is deception as identity, and Samson, which is deception as performance. And after we look at these 3, then we'll turn to Jesus and how he actually answers all 3. Because I think Scripture is clear. Deception doesn't protect you. It imprisons you. And we're going to see that in these 3 examples. All right, so let's dive in. So first we have Genesis 3. This is deception as liberation. So if you read Scripture, Genesis chapter 3, beginning of the Bible, the serpent doesn't tempt Eve with rebellion. He tempts her with freedom. Eat this fruit and you will be like God. He tempts her with a better story, with a bigger life, and most importantly, with a self-made identity. You will be like God. You can define right and wrong. And this is the first disguise in Scripture, and it's the disguise of self-definition. But the moment Adam and Eve grasp the fruit and eat it, their eyes are opened, they realize they're naked, sin enters the world, and they hide. They cover themselves. They sew fig leaves, and it's really the first costumes in the Bible is them sewing coverings for themselves. And what we see here is that false freedom always leads to hiding, that false identity always, always, always leads to fear, that false stories always lead to exile, just like Joe and Jerry, just like Sugar, and honestly, just like us. This is what we do. This is this idea, this deception of self-identity that we deal with, this disguise in Scripture of self-deception. So there's Jacob, which is deception as identity. This is Genesis 27 through 32, his story. So Jacob, if you don't know the story, he steals his brother's birthright. He dresses up as him. His mom cooks stew the way his brother does. He tries to sound like him. He wears his clothes to trick his father, and he does trick him. And Jacob doesn't just lie. He actually becomes the lie. He dresses like Esau. He smells like Esau. He hands his dad food like Esau cooks it, and it works. Jacob gets the blessing. He gets the blessing of the firstborn. But that blessing comes with a burden. for Jacob because, again, deception always gives you what you want, but then it takes what you need. And so Jacob, he gains the blessing. He gains the inheritance of the firstborn, the advantage. In that culture, it was very important for the father to bless the firstborn, and Jacob steals that from his older brother Esau. But here's what he loses. He loses his home. He flees from Esau. He loses his brother. His brother's ready to kill him. He loses peace. He loses identity. And he spends 20 years running from the consequences of that costume of deception as identity. Just like anyone who maybe believes if I pretend long enough, I will finally be safe. Jacob, he carries that just like when we have that idea, right? So just like when we think, man, if I pretend long enough, I'll finally be safe. That's Jacob. He's running, trying to be safe. Now, Jacob's turning point actually comes when he wrestles with God. He's on his way home. He knows he's going to face his brother, and he wrestles with God. And he enters the fight as Jacob, the deceiver. But he leaves limping, but he also leaves renamed as Israel, and as the man who finally stops pretending. And when he does meet his brother Esau, they're reconciled. They move forward. It's beautiful, but he has to release that identity of deception. And then third, let's look at Samson, okay? Samson is deception as performance. This is Judges chapters 13 through 16. Samson, he's a Nazirite. He's anointed by God, but man, he just keeps doing dumb stuff. He just keeps, really Judges is just showing throughout the book, it says, in those days, Israel had no king and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And that's what we're seeing is the downfall of this nation as they're in the promised land. But we focus on Samson here in Judges 13 through 16. And his disguise isn't clothing. Clothing is power. Okay, so his disguise isn't clothing, it's power. He hides behind his strength. He hides behind his bravado. He hides behind the persona of the invincible man. But that disguise becomes his prison. And his strength actually blinds him long before the Philistines do. All right, he hooks up with a woman that he shouldn't. There's a little bit of like weird relationship stuff going on there where she's like, how can I bind you? How can I tie you? How can you lose your strength? And he keeps telling her a bunch of fake ways, and then he tells her the real way. She cuts his hair, says the Spirit of God left him, and he doesn't even realize it, that the Spirit had left him. The Philistines come in. They tie him up. They arrest him. They blind him. In his story, it kind of reveals this another form of deception, and it's this disguise of self-sufficiency. It's the belief that I don't need God. I don't need help. I can carry this alone, because he is anointed by God, but he kind of does what he wants. But there's a moment that comes where when that disguise has collapsed, he finally sees clearly. And, I think sometimes the loss of a false identity is the beginning of a true one. When that finally drops, then we can finally see, man, there's something better for us. And so in Samson, his final act, he's placed between two pillars holding up this building, this kind of like a balcony, if you will. And he's on the pillars, and he prays for God to give him strength one more time. And he pushes down the pillars. And it's the moment he finally stops performing, and he tells the truth. He says, remember me, God. And the truth frees him, even in death. It kills him as the rubble comes down, collapsing and killing him, but he also kills a bunch of the Philistines. And he rested in God. So we have these three instances of deception and how they rule. Now let's turn and let's look at Jesus and how Jesus is the truth that sets us free. Because Jesus steps into a world of disguises. He steps into this world of fig leaves, of costumes, of personas, of performances. Jesus steps into our real world. He deals with Pharisees performing righteousness, with Rome performing power, with crowds performing devotion, with disciples performing courage. And he cuts through all of it, because it's all a performance. And he cuts through all of it with one sentence. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John chapter 8. Not a mask, not a performance, not a costume, but the truth. And the thing about Jesus and the truth that he shares is a truth that doesn't expose you to shame you. It exposes you to freedom. It exposes you to free you. Jesus does not hand out disguises. He tears them down. He doesn't offer a persona. He offers a new creation. Through Jesus, there's a new way to be human. He doesn't invite you to pretend. He invites you to be known. That's the difference with Jesus. He invites us into real reality where we can be known and know him and know God. So it's not deception, it's truth. It's a freedom to be who God created you to be once you lay down these false identities, these deceptions that you live, that we live, that I live, that we carry as humans. Okay, so the story lens. Is the main theme redemptive? No, the main theme is not redemptive because the film reinforces the lie that deception works. Now, yes, again, this is a comedy. It's satire in a sense. Like the absurdity shows us the lie that it's false, right? But the film reinforces the lie that deception works because they all stay in this realm. No one changes, no one grows, nothing is resolved. So it reinforces that lie. Now, what realm is the story set in? Well, it's a realm of darkness. It's a world where lies are normal and truth is optional, of mobs, of murder, of disguises and lying and deception. So it's this realm of darkness. Does the film communicate truth? Now, this is where you can say no and yes, even though it does it ironically. See, because the lie that the film shares is the film suggests that lying, disguising yourself, and manipulating others is a viable path to safety, to romance, and fulfillment. Because at the end of the film, these guys have been lying, disguising themselves, manipulating others, and they are getting away. They're finding romance, and for Joe and Sugar, maybe fulfillment. For how long, who knows? But that's the lie the film suggests. But the film, again, because of the absurdity of it, it does reveal a truth in that it shows the emptiness of deception by pretending it's success. That's how it does this, because this is a comedy farce. It shows the emptiness of deception. We know that Osgood and Jerry are not going to last. We know that Joe and Sugar are not going to last. We know that the mob is going to find them. Again, this will not last, and it shows the emptiness. That's the truth that it communicates, is the emptiness of the deception. And it does it by pretending it's success, but we know the difference. All right, so as I sit with this story, I am struck by how easy it is to live like Joe and Jerry. I mean, honestly, to believe that the lie is safer than the truth, to believe that disguise is safer than being known, to believe the performance is safer than being honest, to believe survival requires pretending. And as I think about that, I'm struck by how easy it is for us as Christians to live in disguise, not with dresses or wigs, but with spiritual costumes. I mean, just think about this. Oftentimes, if we are truly honest, often we hide behind rule keeping, we hide behind religious performance, behind spiritual busyness, the idea of doing it right. And we return to old covenant patterns of temples and tithes and hierarchy. We convince ourselves, if I follow the rules, I'll be safe. If I perform well enough, God will approve. If I stay inside the system, I'll belong. If I go to church every Sunday and read my Bible and tithe, then I'm good. We fall for these deceptions. We fall for the systems of just doing it right and following the rules, when Christ has called us to so much more. See, these things that I mentioned are just Christian versions of Joe and Jerry's dresses, of their costumes, of their performances, of their disguises. See, friends, Jesus didn't come to upgrade the old system. Jesus came to fulfill it. He revealed the heart of the law. He tore the veil. He dismantled the hierarchy. He replaced the temple with his body. He replaced performance with presence. He replaced deception with truth. He didn't say, I'll show you the way. He said, I am the way. He didn't say, I'll teach you the truth. He said, I am the truth. He didn't say, I'll give you life. He said, I am the life. See, the characters in Some Like It Hot, they never find that story, but we can. We can lay down the deceptions and find the truth of who Jesus is and the story he is telling. Look, where the film shows us deception is survival, identity is costume, romance is manipulation, belonging as performance, Jesus does something better. He offers truth as freedom, identity as gift, love as covenant, belonging as grace. See, the film ends with the line, well, nobody's perfect. The gospel ends with, behold, I make all things new. So friends, when we let Some Like It Hot and the gospel speak together, we hear the film ask, what happens when deception becomes the story you live in? And the gospel responds, deception traps you, but truth frees you. If this episode resonated with you, if you want to see scripture, film, and your life through one unified lens, come to the Off Script Masterclass. This is where I help spiritually displaced Christians who feel fragmented, confused, or off script finally see Jesus and understand the story they're living in. Most of us are stuck because we've been trying sermons, devotionals, and programs, and we have been living inside a subplot of Scripture rather than the main plot. It's left us spiritually thin and narratively confused, and we don't know how to connect Scripture, film, and our own lives into one coherent story. That's why I created the Off-Script Masterclass. It's a simple, cinematic way to understand why your faith feels fragmented and how to re-enter the story Jesus is actually telling. When you join the Masterclass, you'll understand why your faith feels off-script. You'll see Scripture, film, and your life through one unified lens. You'll see Jesus clearly again, and you will know the next step toward clarity, coherence, and Christ. If you're ready to stop living off-script and step into the story Jesus is telling, join the next Masterclass. You can save your seat at cinematicscripture.com or use the link in the description below. This is Cinematic Scripture. Watch attentively, reflect spiritually, and lead from story. I'll see you next time.